green.
Right.
You know, are we backed off on enforcement, or?
No, there's still enforcement activities that are going on. I mean, I can find out exactly how many violations have been issued.
Mr.
Well, right
Chair?
now, there's no, other than issuing a fine per violation, there's no other.
Yeah, no, I
remedy
understand, I
available.
just,
We've also had some inquiries, I don't know if you received phone calls in relation to people with private wells not falling under any restrictions. I don't know if there's anything the communities can do anyway. I think some communities do restrict that.
Yes, they do. The DEP is actually.
we actually, Steve, we gave up a little piece of a license that we had, which would have allowed us to draw additional water from the Ipswich River. And that was, by doing so, in order to maintain that little piece of license that came up for renewal rather than the grandfathered amount, they wanted us to restrict private wells.
Okay, so
And we told them, forget it.
who determined that?
Good question.
Okay. I would think that
I
would
think
be
it
a
had-
matter that should come before the board to make that determination. I mean, it is a.
May have, Dave Hanlon may have brought that before us, I don't recall.
But does that prevents us from drawing more water, but is there anything that prevents us from restricting well use? Seems like a
Well,
different
maybe-
issue.
So we somehow or another waived that?
We elected, that was one piece, by the way, Steve, that was one little piece of,
Okay.
it was under Dave Hanlon's time as DPW
Was the window of
director.
opportunity lost?
Sorry, what regard?
In what regard, as far as we go back and revisiting that to capture that ability to?
No, it wasn't, I think this had to do with the wastewater committee and
Sure.
Excuse me, Mr. Chair. The Water Commission met just over a week ago, and we're going to meet on the 24th. And these are items that we're going to be discussing. We're going to try to pull a whole slew of ideas together to see how we can manage the use of water in the town and what is applicable and so on. And that's one of the topics that we're going to be, one of the many topics we're going to be discussing on the 24th.
Mhm.
Okay, and we talked about whether we were going to, is it better to do it, we're trying to figure out, is it better to do it in April versus October to address these issues? One of the good reasons for doing it in April is that water is, people are aware of the water situation more in April than they are in October.
Usually have plenty of them.
Yeah, well, yeah, but I mean, we know the months are coming where we're going to have restrictions, and whereas in December and so on, no one, if we pass something in October, they're gonna forget about it by the time April comes. So that's some of the things that we're just looking at this time, so, any ideas or any suggestions anybody has that, I thought about what you were talking about as far as the wells were concerned. And then I started thinking about shallow wells versus deep wells and so on, because a shallow well, you lose use of water quickly anyway, but if you have an artesian well, then that's accessing possibly some of our waters, so. So we're looking at those things.
I don't understand why we're wasting our time on this. I'm sorry, no disrespect, but why do we wanna get our hands wrapped around private wells? Do we have an issue?
Well, the first issue is that we're located in probably, what is this, most stressed river basin in the country.
Okay, but do we have an issue that we have to address?
We don't know. That's what we want to find out. That's why we have to look at it. Does that make sense?
In other words,
No, makes no sense to me. We're wasting our time here.
Trying to identify whether it is a problem or not?
any water that's
Yeah.
drawn out of the, every drop of water that's drawn out of the Ipswich River, a water basin, is a problem because there isn't enough room for the water. And it's extremely stressed. So whether it be a private well, or whether it be a public well, it has an impact on the basin.
So that's what we wanna do as a committee. We're gonna focus on private wells now.
Among the many things,
But we don't need to.
Well, yeah, but,
We have a wastewater commission. Let them deal with it. Let them worry about it. Take the action, throw it over there, let them research and get back to
Well,
us.
look,
why is it-
you know, first of all, I'm not sure I wanna go down that path. I think the DEP is gonna sooner or later shut the door on that issue altogether.
Well, they tried to get us to get on board, and someone determined that we weren't gonna get on board.
Now, that was
with it.
just, that was one
What's
piece
wrong
of
with it?
a number of things. I don't remember all of them, but we can get that from the, probably from Mark Clark, I'm sure. He has it in his memory as to what hoops we had to jump through to get that license for that additional, I don't remember whether it was 100,000 gallons a day or whatever it was, back, and it was quite a while ago. And it was a discussion, I think, took place when, maybe it was on the wastewater committee when we were dealing with wastewater issues.
anyway, those are things that we're looking at.
But getting back to the overall issue, that's a placeholder on here at this point. And I don't disagree with waiting until April. But I also don't see why, if we've got some recommendations associated with controlling, I think that most of this is related to giving the authority to shut water off,
Yes.
Right,
maybe change the fine structure.
right.
That's what we're talking about here.
Yes.
The other thing, we talked the other day about this, Jeff, was, as far as, we don't even know who has irrigation system, who doesn't, and, in the process of permitting, our bylaws call for certain restrictions and controls to be in place for the irrigation systems, but we're not ensuring, we have no way of assurance that they're even in place, they've been put in. So we need to tighten up our,
You're
due diligence on the
suggesting that we
permit.
if somebody has a well, we don't know whether they have it or not because there's no permitting.
even if they have
process
a
for
regular
that.
irrigation system hitched up to the town's water supply, it's supposed to be able to have these timing mechanisms to shut them off and
Mhm.
all these other, we don't know if they do or not
Yeah.
in private homes. Yet we have a bylaw that requires them, but we don't, as homes are being built, permits are being pulled. We don't know if these,
Keep a record of it.
we don't have a record, so.
Well, we don't have a
But-
way, we have a
Maybe at
record,
some
we don't
point
have a
the
way
water
of.
department should be, doing a survey and find, who has, we could probably do a pretty quick survey based on water usage, which residential households have, irrigation systems.
Right.
And find out if the proper controls are in place, and if not, notify them if they haven't,
Right.
through the water department, notify them that we're gonna be a good, substantial water user. Here is, you have an irrigation system, here are the bylaws and requirements that you have these systems in place. Needs to follow a survey, that you do, and you may be subject to inspection,
Yeah.
say they haven't.
Yeah. Bob, what the thought was that we have in our bylaw that you have to have sensors on your irrigation system so that if it's raining, they won't function, okay? So it's in the bylaw, but I don't know if when they install irrigation systems, whether they need a permit to do so. So we don't know if they're doing that. They could just be putting in anything, even though we have a bylaw. So
Mhm.
those are the types of things we want to,
Well,
cross our Ts, dot
I have
Is.
seen irrigation going on while it's raining.
Well, I know
so-
that, so obviously, but if they didn't pull a permit, then we don't know what they ordered and so on, so.
But if we have something in place to assist us with what we just went through, as far as, whether it be fines or further fines or some sort of
Yeah,
other.
I think
That,
that.
if we can do something even to keep it progressing rather than waiting until April, we can tweak it now and tweak it again in April.
Right.
But we have some suggestions that make sense, that we can put in place for October, let's do it.
Yeah, I would hope also that we're through this by October. By the way, I went through Middleton today, in section of 62, 114, where they have their big sign, and they're now at level 5. They were at level 4 for quite a while.
Litchfield has big signs up there too.
The level 5 says no watering except by hose between the hours of, I don't know whether it's 6 or
Yeah.
something,
Yeah, I saw that
to
too.
something in the morning.
It was a tough
Where
time.
before it was, you could water on 2 specific days, I think it was. They've got some kind of a structured.
On the news last night, they said there were 167 communities with water restrictions.
Except for Andover.
So they're using our water. Okay,
I'd like me to move on to the amendment of the code involving dog licensing. Presently, the fee for dog licensing is included in the town's general bylaws. Under state law, the town clerk proposes that they be included under the town clerk fee schedule, which means that any future changes in the rate or fee is not something that's approved by town meeting. Simply a matter of administration and or the board approving it and moving on. This is much more efficient. Our next article is an article submitted, and it's a bit clumsily worded here, but this is for conducting an economic impact study associated with build-out of sewer infrastructure to serve the needs of commercial businesses in town. There's been considerable discussion taking place about, that was one of the missing elements when the proposal was last presented 2 years ago. And so it is an item that will be presented to town meeting in order to secure the necessary funds to allow a impact study done, which would then validate the benefits, the economic benefits of the expansion of the sewer system.
and that would be funded out of, there's a balance of about $400,000 in the,
I spoke, the
that's what I
Public
thought.
Works, they've asked me to go back and look at that, because I saw your communication
Yeah.
back and forth, and I was of the same impression that you were, that I didn't believe those were available funds. So before they're spent, I wanna make sure that, in fact, they're available.
Well, we get $750,000 from the Edgewater project for sewer, of which some of the money was spent for the land swap,
That's right.
and some was put into some of the infrastructure that was put in, right? And I was surprised that we had that much, but I kinda took it for, it was, someone sent it and said that's what we have, so.
Needless to say, we won't be entering into any contracts until we have it. For the information, the board members, it's something the CPC is working on, is putting together a request for proposals to scope services. Because typically what you want to do is hire someone who has some planning background, to kind of predict what type of development there'll be, what the benefits, economic benefits are associated.
My thought there was, this is what I thought we would, I would suggest to the board we use to fund it. And before the $400,000 popped out of the woodwork, and if it's disappearing, I would suggest that we tap the MTBE fund source. Because what we're looking for out of this is more than just wastewater at this point. But if we don't have to do that, that would be great.
You call it the M?
MTBE settlement was
What do we have to do then?
About 700,000.
it was one of those things where the board discussed whether to join that
Class action.
class action suit or not, and somehow I guess the board decided there's nothing to lose.
Nothing to lose and everything to gain.
Town of Andover didn't.
Paperwork is probably still sitting in someone's desk drawer over there, and they haven't found it.
I think they probably, said, well, nothing will come out of it.
Surprise.
Surprise.
The next article deals with establishment of a Board of Health clinic revolving account. As you know, the Board of Health holds in